Hello everybody. In today's video, we're going to be doing a tier list for the Streets of Rogue traits. Now, these are just the traits that you can get in general in the game. These aren't going to be including character exclusive traits and no negative traits as well. So these are just the traits that you can get when you level up in the game and you pick using your experience points. So just to go over quickly, the S tier is going to be the tier where you should absolutely pretty much always get it. It's always going to help you. It's going to be a huge boost to your run for pretty much any character you're playing. It's pretty much a must get. A is going to be like a really solid choice. Like it's a trait you're always going to want or you should always consider, but it's not the absolute best. There's some that are better. B is going to be like kind of a mediocre trait, like something you could think about. Maybe if you have other traits that you already got that you needed, you just need something a little bit of a boost. B might be kind of decent or helpful. C is going to be like kind of below average, like it's whatever, like you could get it or not get it, but it's not really going to change much. D is like pretty bad. You should avoid it. It's really just not worth it. And F is just going to be there's no reason to ever use it. It's just a bad trait. So to get in this, let's start with Backstabber. So Backstabber is a trait that is really useful for characters that are going for a melee playstyle. So characters like the assassin or the gorilla or any character that you need to do melee damage with, and particularly characters that aren't going to have enemies be hostile to you immediately because you need to be able to get behind them and sneak up behind them. But overall, this trait oftentimes with most melee weapons, you could sometimes one hit or two hit pretty much like most characters in the game. So this is overall like a really helpful trait to have. It's less useful if you're using guns or maybe you're just not going for a you know a heavy combat run. But overall, I'd say this trait is really good. I'm gonna put it in A tier. It's just universally very useful, especially when you're using melee a lot, which is most characters use melee in this game at some point. So moving on to Blast Survivor, so this makes it so that you can survive any explosions that you as the character create. So if you like blow up a generator, you won't take any damage from it. If you're using grenades, this is really useful. Um, there's a lot of things that can explode in this game, like generators is probably one that you'll run into a lot. This can definitely save you, especially if you're going for a combat heavy like play style. Like if you're playing the soldier class, this is definitely a really good trait to have. However, it's less useful on some characters, and it's not always going to be helpful. It really it's a bit more of a situational trait, I would say. It really kind of depends on what items you're using and what character you're playing. But it's still really good, especially if you have something like a rocket launcher. This can be an amazing trait to have. I think just because it's not always universally good, I'm gonna put it in B tier. But it's still amazing if you find yourself using explosives a lot. Um, it's definitely a good trait to have. Blast Master is, I guess, kind of similar to the other trait, except this makes it so I think you can blow up most objects. Yeah, blow up most objects or walls. And this is really useful if you have a rocket launcher. If you can get a rocket launcher plus Blast Master, that's like pretty much an instant win in this game. That's an extremely overpowered combo, and it also works for other things too, like grenades. Um, I think it's less useful than Blast Survivor, because Blast Survivor helps you survive. It increases your survivability, and it stops you from dying instantly from explosions. But Blastmaster is more useful. It has more utility to you. So, but I think Blastmaster is gonna go in C tier. Just 'cause explosions already blow up a lot of objects and walls, and so it's less useful than say like surviving blast, but it's still really useful to have. So I would still get it if you can, if you have like a rocket launcher. But most of the time, Blast Survivor is more universally useful because even if you're not using explosive, you can still survive explosives. But Blast Master is only useful if you have explosives. But if you do, it's really good. So Block Breaker makes it so you can destroy walls. I'm pretty sure. Yes, you can destroy walls with oh no, it makes it so you can block hits from enemies with your melee, which is decent. However, I don't find it to be always super applicable, even if you're playing as a melee character. it makes it so you'll still do damage even if the enemy blocks your hit. But that's not always super useful because especially with melee combat in this game, it's very fast and you don't get punished for swinging multiple times. So you can just keep hitting the NPC over and over again until you um, eventually do damage to them, which will happen. And there's ways to kind of go around corners and catch them off guard. And there's other ways to get through enemies blocking your hits than using this. But it's not useful. I wouldn't recommend getting it if you're playing a melee character. Even if you're using melee heavily, I would recommend like a bunch of other traits over this, like increased crit chance or um, like even kneecappers better than this. I'm gonna throw it in D tier. It's not useless. It's not F tier because it's not useless. It has a purpose, but I would just avoid it. And unless you just already have a bunch of melee traits and you just need to get something, this can be useful. But I'd say generally, but there's just better options out there if you're doing a melee character. Bullet Breaker allows you to destroy bullets that are coming from enemies with your bullets. This is never really useful. It can actually be a detriment in some ways because sometimes you want your bullets to just hit the enemy instead of stopping their bullets. Like sometimes it's better to just quickly kill them rather than block their bullets because they're still going to be alive. They're still going to be shooting at you even if you're breaking their bullets. It's better to just have your bullets go through their bullets and kill them so you don't take any more damage. And so I think this is also going to be D tier just for the way gun combat works in this game. It's not as useful as just killing the enemy normally. And yeah, you're better off just doing damage and killing the NPC rather than trying to block their bullets with this. Next up is burning bullets. So this is a really good trait. So the flamethrower and fire in this game is really good because you can basically just enter any wood building for free or any wood door, and it also does more damage. Fire can also just do a lot of damage. So burning bullets is really useful for those reasons. Basically, just kind of allows you to have the functionality of a flamethrower without having a flamethrower, which I think it's going to go B tier just because the flamethrower is just far superior. If you have a flamethrower, this is kind of a useless trait, and the flamethrower is just far superior to this, but it is useful if you don't have it. But it's not quite A tier because it's only useful for wood buildings, and there's other traits that are more universally applicable than burning bullets. Butterfinger allows you to knock the melee weapon out of characters if you hit them. There's just a small chance you'll knock their melee weapon out or just their weapon in general out of their hands, which is actually very useful. Even if they have a gun, you can knock it out of their hands and they won't shoot you anymore. You could just having the NPC you're fighting not have a weapon anymore is always useful. But I don't know if I would call it like extremely useful, like something you should always get. If you're going for a melee character, this is useful. Other than that, it's really not. This is good for heavy combat. So I think it's gonna go in C tier because there's probably better. If you're going for just purely melee, it's probably not the best trait to get. However, I would say it's like a tier above block breaker in the sense that it's more useful than that trait, but it's overall not amazing. And so I think it's like C tier. It's kind of below average, but you can make it work. Class solidarity makes it so you can't hit people that you're aligned with. Let me just double check that. Or people of your own people of your own like class. So if you're playing like the mobster, you can't hit the mobsters. If you're playing the cannibal, you can't hit the cannibals. Um, this is useful if you're using like the friend phone, or if you have like allies that are the same class as you, 'cause then you can't hit them. Because one of the worst things about having NPCs in this game, like having NPCs that you're working with, is that you can accidentally kill them with your guns or your melee. They can get in your way and just soak up damage that should have been gone to someone who's hostile to you. But again, a lot of these traits, like there's a bunch of these that we'll go through at some point. But traits, in general, using NPCs in this game is not an amazing strategy, just because NPCs are kind of dumb. They get themselves killed. They run in front of you. But again, this trait will solve some of what makes NPCs annoying in this game. This trait will solve. So if you're using NPCs, it's useful. However, obviously, if you're just doing a solo run, this is not. And generally, I think solo, not using NPCs, just playing solo in this game is a much better strategy. So I think this is going to go C tier. It For some characters it's useful, like the mobster. This is a very useful trait, but other than that, it's not. It's kind of whatever. Clumsiness forgiven is when you break people's like objects or their walls. They won't get hostile to you. I think this is kind of a pointless trait. I'm gonna put it in F tier. It's not. I really have never found this to be like an issue, like breaking people's stuff, because most of the time you can just run away from them or just kill them, or like this just never really becomes an issue where you feel like you need this trait. So it's pretty much just kind of pointless to have. You might as well just get something else that's more useful. So confident in crowds, I think, makes it so that you do more damage when you have followers. This is another one of those traits that's based on NPCs, and relying on NPCs for things like damage or just getting kills in general is just not a consistent strategy. And so this kind of falls into the same category as like class solidarity. However, some characters this could work. You do more damage, but again, if you don't have this trait, it can also make it so that that extra damage you're doing is just soaked up by NPCs. And so I'm also gonna throw this. I'm gonna I'm gonna say this is a little bit worse than class solidarity. I'm gonna put this in D tier because if you have NPCs and you can make them attack someone, you're already doing a decent amount of damage. You don't really need the extra damage. And again, there's also a likelihood that that extra damage will just get eaten by an NPC because if you don't have this trait, if you don't have class solidarity, you can just end up killing your own NPCs. And so yeah, I think this is a little bit worse. It's not useless, but I think it's a little bit worse than class solidarity. So cool with cannibals is an interesting trait because the cannibals are probably the biggest threat that you face on the park levels. But the thing is that that's pretty much only where you see them, and even when you do see them, they're not really a huge deal. They only have melee weapons, and you can generally avoid them. Like for most missions, you'll have to deal with them, but generally speaking, you can avoid them pretty well. And even when you do have to fight them, they're pretty easy to just avoid. You can run away from them or just kill them. They only have melee weapons. There's a lot of ways to deal with them, and you pretty much won't see them. You pretty much you don't see them on floors 1 and 2, and you very rarely see them on floors 4 when they jump out of the sewers, and you pretty much don't see them on 5 or 6. So it's pretty much only useful for that one level, and even then, cannibals aren't a huge deal to begin with. But with that being said, it does still help you. It will make the park levels a lot easier, which the park levels are really good for gearing up before you go into the downtown level, which is really when like the game kind of ramps up in difficulty. So I think this is I'm gonna say it's B tier. It's really not something I go out of my way to get, but it's definitely a really useful trait to have if you can grab it. Like if you don't have anything else really, like if you don't have a certain traits in mind that you want to get or you don't need anything in particular, it's a good trait to just grab if you can grab it. So next up is blends in nicely. It just makes it so that the distance which people notice you is much less. Which I'm also gonna throw this in B tier because while it doesn't like it doesn't stop enemies from doing more damage or from ultimately like being able to attack you. It makes it so you can just sneak around easier. Which even if you're not going for stealth, it's still a nice trick to have. You can get the jump on enemies more often, or just more easily move around the map. Sometimes just simply navigating the map without issues really helpful if you're just trying to get to like um, stations to sell or buy stuff, or just simply get to objectives or avoid certain hostile groups. It's just generally a really nice trait to have. Disturbing facial expressions. I'm gonna throw this in F tier. Honestly, I think this is kind of a worthless trait. And sometimes it's actually a detriment because sometimes you want to just be able to kill an NPC, but they might just run away from you, and you have to chase them, which is a huge pain in the ass. And generally speaking, you don't really need NPCs to run away from you. Like if you're getting in fights or if you're hostile with an NPC, you should generally be able to deal with them. Like NPCs one on one are not really a big issue. And if you're in a group, this trait really doesn't matter either because it's not like all of them are going to run away from you. So I generally think this is kind of just a waste of a slot. I guess it's not completely useless, but it's going to go in F tier just because virtually anything else that you could get is probably better than this, probably more useful. Okay, so next is Don't Make Me Angry, and this trait makes it so that you just do more damage when you're low on health. And this trait is not really useful because if you're low on health, you shouldn't really be fighting anyway. And if you are fighting when you're low on health, you're probably going to die anyway. You're kind of in like a really desperate situation. And so, like when you're low on health, you want to be able to escape or heal up. Fighting is kind of one of the last things you want to do. So this is kind of pointless. I am gonna put it. I'm gonna put it in F tier. I don't think this ever really helps you. Like, you're not really getting into fights when you're low on health, and if you are, you're probably just gonna die anyway. So I'd say just don't ever get this trait. Like, it's kind of like a high F, maybe a low D. But I'm gonna put it in F just because I don't ever find this to be really like useful. So next trait, Durabilicious. This Mitchin makes so melee weapons don't break as fast, but so here's the thing. This is gonna go in D tier, and no, actually, I'm gonna put this in F tier too, because for a couple reasons. First of all, melee weapons are so abundant in this game anyway. Like they're literally you find them everywhere. So many NPCs drop them. They're so easy to find that you never really need um to worry about finding melee weapons. If anything, you worry more about getting rid of melee weapons because they take up melee slots. I often find I sell like probably half, maybe more than half of all the melee weapons I end up getting in a run just because they clog up inventory space. And that's only going to get worse if you have this trait. And you might say, well, this is helpful for something like the sledgehammer, which is rare and you want to preserve it. But this is going to apply to all your melee weapons. You're just going to end up getting clogged up with a bunch of other bad melee weapons while you're trying to preserve your sledgehammer. But even then, the sledgehammer is like it's not worth getting this trait just to preserve the sledgehammer. Like like the sledgehammer by itself is a really good item, but not worth getting an entire trait just to preserve it. Like you're better off just churning through melee weapons and not even bothering with this. So floats like a butterfly. This I think this is also going to be an F. I think we're running into a bit of a streak here of F tier. I don't ever find this trait to be worth grabbing. It just kind of makes it so you can maneuver better while you're swinging your melee weapons, but that's never really an issue. And there's so many ways to kind of like deal with melee combat in this game. The NPC, the AI is kind of very easy to like to fight in this game. You can like fake them out. You can go around corners. You never really need to like be like dodging melee attacks. And even then, like even if you do go this route, it's really not amazing. It doesn't give you like tons of maneuverability, especially if you already have low speed. So this is like virtually never useful to get. I say just don't even bother. Next up is GPS, which lets you see all of the like markers on the map, like all of the places where the shops are, or the like the loadout-o-matic, the sell-o-matic, like all those different things on the map, and you can teleport to them right away, which is very useful, but also not not like incredible. I'm gonna throw it in C tier. It can be useful on disaster floors where you don't know where everything is and you don't really have time to go around and explore the map. But on non-disaster floors, you can just walk around and go and find stuff. Like it's not super useful. Like it doesn't actively help you really win a floor or win the run. It's just generally a nice bonus to have. But overall, I don't really prioritize it. I think it's like kind of like a below average trait. Like I don't really get it ever. But like if I also don't have anything else to really need, I'll just grab it because it's a nice perk. It's a nice bonus to have. It might even be like D tier, but I'm gonna put it in C just because I think it's better than a lot of like I'd rather have it over a lot of these traits, but it's still not amazing. It's kind of below average. Graceful is a trait that could be really useful on some more stealth oriented characters like the thief, or even like the vampire. But generally speaking, floor hazards aren't really like that big of a deal. Like I guess they're a bigger deal in maybe like the uptown areas where you have those like blue like gates that you can't pass unless you have the like unless you leave your weapons out or you don't have any weapons on you. This is useful, especially for getting into the mayor's village. You don't need to like sell your stuff or bribe the bouncers. You can just walk through. But for most, but there's many ways to deal with floor hazards. Like the ones like the laser ones you find in like the general missions, you can just throw a rock through them or shoot them and destroy them. Or you could bribe, uh, you know, the bouncers, or there's warp grenades. Or there's many ways to get past hazards. So this is generally not useful, but it's also not useless. I'm gonna say it's C tier, mostly just because of the mayor's village, and like the uptown floors, like getting into the shops and other things. But it's also not like incredible. I wouldn't go out of my way to get it. It's like a low C as well. It's kind of like in the same boat as GPS. Like if you can get it, grab it, I guess, but don't prioritize it. Friend of the family. This is going to be our first S tier trait. This is an amazing trait. If you can get this, you should basically always grab it. It basically makes the downtown floors like free. So this makes it so that not just that the mobsters won't attack you or shake you down, they're actually allied to you. So they'll even fight for you and they'll defend you. And the mobsters are everywhere on the downtown levels. And they're super powerful. There's a lot of them. They travel in packs. They have guns. This just makes your downtown levels basically free, which is that's the exact point where you need to be getting a lot of good stuff to go into the uptown levels because the uptown levels are even more difficult. And so this creates like a cascading effect where your downtown levels are easy and your uptown levels are easy, and then you can go and face the mayor pretty easily. And they're not the mobsters. There's less of them on the uptown floors, but they're still there. And so this still gives you value even in the uptown floors and even the mayor's village. So this is just an incredible trait to have. Pretty much always grab this if you can. Friend of the common folk makes it so like slum dwellers and like the common citizens are just like allied to you, kind of like friend of the family, but just for like slum dwellers. Which the slum dwellers really don't have like much going for them. Like they don't really have like weapons or anything you need. Like I guess it's kind of useful. It can save you in a pinch, but I don't really go out of my way to get this. It can be useful if you're going for like an election victory. It'll help you get election points. That's probably like the main reason you would get it. So for that reason, I think I'm gonna put it in C. But overall, it's not like an amazing trait to get. There's better. I think cool with cannibals is better. Like random reverence and friend of the family is better, but it's still okay, I guess. Next up is I'm outie, which this trait is good. Anything that can help you escape and get out of danger is really helpful in this game, and it'll pretty much apply to any character, which I think it puts it in a solid B. Like it's nice. You move super fast too when you have this and you're low on health. So yeah, I think just for the fact it helps you escape, it's not like a quick escape teleport, where it'll just get you out of danger immediately, but you could definitely survive more than you would if you didn't have this trait. However, I wouldn't say it's amazing. I would grab it. It's a solid pick, I would say. So increased crit chance, I think this is probably also going to be maybe a B tier as well. It just it just makes it so that you have a higher chance to crit, which is really useful, especially if you're doing a lot of damage. I think I don't think it makes an enormous difference in your run, but it's still overall like just a nice passive benefit to have. So yeah, I think that's going to be a good spot for it. Homesickness killer makes it so that followers will follow you to the next level, which depending on the character you're playing is really helpful. Like we established before, NPCs aren't amazing in this game. They won't really like win you a run, but they're still a good like kind of like expendable resource to have. Especially if you went through all the trouble to get them, you don't want to just get rid of them. So I'd say it's a B tier. If you have NPCs, it's decent. All right, I'm gonna bump it down to a C tier just because most characters I feel like you're not really going to be having NPCs, so most of the time this is not really going to be like a useful trait. But if you do have NPCs, it's nice to have. Infectious Spirit, I think I need to brush up real quick on what exactly this does. A followers gain extra health. So again, this is like kind of in the same boat. Like it's also probably going to be C tier. It's just really dependent on if you have NPCs, and again, NPCs aren't that amazing. They're probably just going to die super quickly anyway, but it'll help, I guess. Intrusion Artist makes it so that your like thieving tools like a lockpick and stuff might not break when you use it, which I think that's like a D tier trait. It's really not amazing. I mean, lockpicks aren't super hard to come by. Things like window cutters aren't super hard. They're pretty easy to clone too. So generally, like it's just not really worth it to get, but it's not useless. I guess grab it, especially if you're going to be using them a lot. Like if you're the thief character, I guess it's useful. Kneecapper will slow opponents when you hit them, which is useful for getting away. This is kind of in like a similar category as like some of the other melee traits, like a Butterfinger or like Blockbreaker, but I generally don't find this super useful. It can help. It help you escape. It's one of those like helpful to escape, but again, it's not always going to be super useful. I think it's going to go. I think it's kind of on par with Butterfinger. I think it's going to be like C tier. I think it's yeah. I think that's a good spot for it. Knockback King, I think just increases your knockback. Yeah, this is not super useful. Oftentimes you don't like this is one of those things where oftentimes you don't want characters you hit to be knocked back. Like oftentimes it's better to just kill NPCs and eliminate them right away rather than knocking them all around or avoiding them. So generally you don't want this. It's kind of a detriment, which I think I'm going to put it in F tier. There's also so much better ways to deal with NPCs. There's so many traits you could get that allow you to deal with NPCs much better than just knocking them around. I mean, it's probably more fun, but it's also not useful. It's not good to get. Knuckly is another F tier item. This just increases your durability. It increases your damage on the fists, which like who really cares? Melee weapons are so common and so much better than the fist anyway that this is basically useless. There's just no need to get this. Loneliness Killer makes it so that an NPC will follow you, will appear with you at the beginning of each round, which now, this might be controversial because I've talked a lot of trash about NPCs already on this list, but I'm actually going to put this in A tier. And here's the reason why I'm going to do that. So, unlike the other uh, NPC like follower type traits we've had before, this is consistent. It will give you a follower at the beginning of each round, and this can be upgraded too. I think to give you two followers. So because it's so consistent, you'll always basically have an expendable pool of NPCs to help you. That'll always be useful on every level. While these other ones like Homesickness Killer, or the one that heals like Confident Crowds, like these are all dependent on you already having a group of NPCs, which is not always guaranteed, but this one is. So this is pretty much always useful, even for every character, even if you're not um, going for a character that's going to be relying on NPCs, it will still always help you. And so I think because its consistency like is kind of unmatched, it's going to go in A tier. Basically, the higher up the list, the more not only the more useful and powerful it is, but the more consistent it is, the more consistently helpful it'll always be. So long lunge, this is another kind of, I'm gonna put it in D tier. It's another one of these um, melee traits that is just not really worth it. You never really think to yourself like, wow, this trait's amazing. It's really helping me out. You just never think that it's just better to get. Like I think even something like Kneecap or Butterfinger is better than this. It just makes you hit a little bit further, but again, who really cares? At the end of the day, it's not really worth getting. Longer status effects. This can be a double-edged sword because it can make your positive status effects last longer, but also your negative ones. And oftentimes in Streets of Rogue, your negative status effects are it's worse to get a bad status effect than it is good to get a good status effect. So because of that, I think this is going to go in D tier because oftentimes you want your negative status effects to wear off as quickly as possible. Those are the ones that can really kill you in a run. Versus positive status effects are relatively um, common to come by, even if they don't last as long with this trait. So overall, this is going to go so low on the list just because it can be an active detriment to you sometimes. Lock and load, this is going to go in S tier. I love this trait. It basically gives you ammo at the start of every run. And obviously, guns are the best weapons in this game. Um, Running out of ammo is not always a huge problem in this game because NPCs drop it so often, but this will always it'll just always guarantee that your guns have some amount of ammo in them. Especially if you have really good guns like the Uzi, the flamethrower, or the rocket launcher, you'll just always have ammo at the start of every level. So this will just always help. Like even if you're not going for a firearms character, you'll probably always have some kind of firearm on you. This will always be useful. There's very few characters, very few situations where you wouldn't want this. So next is low cost jobs. I think this is probably going to go in D tier. I was thinking F for a second, but there are probably some situations where you want to hire people, but NPCs are not always super useful, and hiring them for less still costs you money, and they're still NPCs. You're still kind of just gambling um, on how useful they're going to be. So I'd say avoid this, but it's not useless. It can help you. So medical professional, I think, just makes it so that your followers will heal. Yeah, makes it, yeah, they heal once per floor. So this is again this is another NPC based trait, which I think it's gonna go probably in C tier. If you need NPCs, if you're playing a character like let's say the gorilla, or the mobster, this can be useful. But overall, sometimes it's more useful just to let your followers die and get more rather than go out of your way to get this trait just so they'll heal a little bit at the start of every floor. Generally this is not worth getting, but at the same time it kind of falls in the same category as maybe like these other kind of follower based traits. So I think C tier is a good spot for it. Modern Warfare, this might be controversial. This starts on the soldier character. It basically makes you heal below 20. If you upgrade it, you'll heal below 40. But generally speaking, you don't really want to rely on this to be healing you. I think it's going to go D tier. You really don't want to be relying on this to heal you because 20, first of all, 20 or 40 health is already really low. like way lower than you comfortably want to be in this game. Even if you are, there's many other ways to heal. There's doctors, um, there's healing items, there's just leveling up in general. You never really need this, and when you do find yourself needing it, you probably just use a healing item anyway. But with that being said, it's a decent passive to have. I probably wouldn't get it. I probably wouldn't go out of my way to get it if I leveled up. But on something like the soldier, just to have passively, it's decent, and it can help you. Nimble Fingers makes it so that things like, if you're doing a lockpick uh, or like a hacking tool, it basically just goes faster. Now that's definitely useful, and it has its place. Like it can help you avoid getting spotted by like a cop or something if you're like breaking into a door. But overall, I don't find that the time that it takes to do that kind of stuff is really a detriment. Like this definitely helps you out, but I think it's kind of a below average trait, which I guess C tier is kind of like the below average tier. So I think that's where it's going to go. No infighting, I think, makes it so that, let's see, you can't hit your followers. So this is kind of like um, class solidarity, except with followers instead of the class you're a part of, which I think is a little bit more useful than, where did I put class solidarity? I put it in C tier. I think this is a little bit more useful than that. It's probably a little bit like a tier above. So I think this is good. Like if you have followers, this is really good because then you can't damage them, and that's like one of the worst aspects of having followers is that you'll accidentally kill them or they'll soak up damage. Class solidarity is good. It kind of does a similar thing if you're just like only getting followers of a certain class. But this is generally more useful because it'll apply to any followers. So I think it's one tier, probably above class solidarity. So on the house makes it so that there's a chance, like a 50% chance that a shop owner will just give you something for free when you go to buy it, which is good. But here's the deal: shopkeepers aren't like, you shouldn't be relying on shops in this game. Shops don't really have the game-winning stuff that you need. And generally speaking, when you buy something from a shop, it's not always going to be like super expensive, and it's not really always going to be consistent. So this won't always help you. I guess it's also item vouchers too, which kind of undermine this trait. And item vouchers aren't super rare. So with that being said, it has its place in the game. I think it's also going to be kind of like a little bit below average of a trait. I don't really ever go out of my way to get this. It's just kind of pointless. But it does have its place in this game. I think it's a little bit below average though. Penetrating bullets. I think this is an F tier trait because it's an active detriment in many ways. Because oftentimes you'll be shooting at an enemy and your bullet will go through them and then hit someone else, and now that person will be hostile to you. And oftentimes that's just a really bad outcome. Now, if you're getting chased by multiple people, this will penetrate through them and you'll be able to damage more people with the same amount of bullets. But oftentimes it's not a huge deal because you can oftentimes just spam down a group of people with bullets and kill them. And you don't really need this trait, although it is helpful in that situation. But more often than not, you're just going to end up making people hostile to you that shouldn't have been. So this is overall just not. I'd say it's more of a detriment than it helps you. So I'd say like just don't ever get this. It's not useful. Prickly skin makes it so that you can possibly do damage to someone when they attack you. I think it's just melee damage though, which is probably going to be the majority of damage you take. And it is useful. So I think this is going to go probably in B tier. It's useful. I think there's better traits, but I think it's pretty solid, I would say. It's a solid choice. Like if I'm getting upgrades, I always consider this. Like it's one of the first ones I look towards, but there's also better out there. I think B is a good spot for it. Random Reverence. So I'm gonna put this in A tier. Now this is another NPC style trait. and it basically makes it so random people will be aligned with you. Like anybody on an entire floor, from cops to random people, anyone can be aligned with you. This is really helpful because sometimes you can just straight up win you like an objective. Like if you need some get something from a shopkeeper and they're aligned with you, you just ask them for it, they'll give it to you. Or sometimes like someone in a building that you need to get into will be aligned and you can just walk past them and that'll help you out. And sometimes you just have random people who will help you. Like if you're getting attacked, someone random person might be aligned with you and they'll fight for you. This is again based on NPCs, so I don't think it's S, and it's also random, so it's not it's not as consistent as I would expect an S tier to be. But it is still really good. I still love this trait, especially, and it will also gain you election victory points too. So I think it lands itself in A just because even if you're going for election or non-election, this will still help you. It's overall a very solid trait. So safe in crowds makes you take less damage from when you have followers. It's kind of similar to the confident in crowds trait, which I put in D. However, I do think this is maybe a tier above, like it's in C tier. It's still not great. It's still below average, but I think it's a little bit better because oftentimes taking less damage is better than doing more damage. Like if you're in a crowd of people, you want to be taking less damage rather than doing more. It's probably more useful for you in general, and it increases your survivability. And so next up is Secret Vandalizer. I think this just makes it so that when you steal from people, they don't. Or no, this is when. Let me check. Oh, so when you hit walls and objects, they don't make any noise. So I'm actually going to put this in F because if you're someone who plays this game a lot, you actually know the value of hitting a wall to distract people. Like if you're playing Thief, you can hit a wall, they'll turn around, and you can pickpocket them. Or if you're playing like the Assassin, you can hit a wall, they'll turn around, and you can backstab them. Or if you're playing the Shapeshifter, you can hit a wall, they'll turn around, and you could like possess them. Getting people to be distracted by hitting things is actually a really like helpful thing in this game. There's probably some scenarios or some characters where it's more useful to not make noise, but I find in general the ability to distract NPCs and have them turn around with hitting walls is extremely useful, and so this just gets rid of that. So I'd say it's just F because it actively hurts your game. Share the health, it just makes it so that you can heal your followers when you heal, which I think is gonna go in B tier because it does kind of, even though NPCs are kind of like an expendable thing, this does make them a little bit more resilient, especially if you're going to be healing a lot, which you probably are in general in this game. So you can save your NPCs and maybe make them fight a little bit longer, and just kind of, extend their utility a little bit more to you. So I think if you're going for kind of actually no, I'm gonna throw this down in C tier, just because like it doesn't help you at all if you don't have followers, and the health boost is not that great, but it's still decent. I'd say it's like a C plus, almost like a B minus maybe. Like it's one of the better, or it's like on par with maybe some of these other class like follower based traits. Promise I'll Return is the one I misspoke before. This is the one when you steal from NPCs, they don't uh, get angry at you. I'm also gonna put this in F tier because you just never really need to worry about this. Generally, if you're stealing things from NPCs, you can already just kill them, and then it doesn't matter. Or there's other ways to kind of sneakily get by and get items. I don't ever find this to be really um worth it. I don't think it also applies to like uh stealing things like that you need for, what do you call it? It doesn't apply for when you're doing like a mission. So this just really doesn't help you out. Like there's other ways to just steal things and get away with it. So I'd say don't even bother with this. Shrewd Negotiator will help you get lower prices at shops, which, like I said before, shops are not something you should be relying on to really win you a game. It's not something like shops don't always have the best items. And even then, especially as you get later into the floors, you already have probably have plenty of money that you don't really have to worry about the cost of things in shops. But I guess it helps you out early, and it can be okay. I'll throw it in C tier. It's kind of below average, but yeah, I think that's probably the best spot for it. Slippery target. This is going to be an S tier trait. This is amazing. This basically makes it so guns can't hit you. Obviously, well they still hit you, but it's significantly harder, especially if you upgrade this for guns to hit you. And obviously, guns for pretty much any character is going to be your biggest danger. So making it so that it just you just can't really be hit. And also, this raises the chance that if like a cop is shooting at you, they'll hit another random civilian or another random person, and then they'll get hostile and attack the person who's attacking you. This is basically always useful. You should basically always get this trait. It'll help you win the game, like directly win. It will help you directly win the game. This is an amazing trait. Sneaky Fingers makes it so that you don't get seen when you're doing things like lockpicking or any other kind of like status bar that you have to do, which is useful. I think um, I think it's probably going to be like probably I'll throw it in B tier. I think it's generally useful, especially it'll avoid you getting seen by cops, which is useful. But overall, I don't find that getting seen is really that common. I'd say it's like a low B tier, but I'm comfortable putting it. Yeah, I'm comfortable putting it in B tier. So shop drops makes it so that that when you kill a shopkeeper, they'll sometimes drop one of the items they had. And oftentimes I don't find this to be super useful. I'm gonna put it in D tier because oftentimes you're not really killing shop owners. And even when you are, oftentimes they'll have guns and they'll fight back and you'll end up taking more damage than you needed. So oftentimes it won't even be worth it. The item that gets dropped, like if you drops a healing item, but you took more damage than it costs to kill the shopkeeper. Sometimes it's just I just don't find this to be worth it. It's not useless. It's not F tier, but it's generally not useful. So Studious and Super Studious, I don't think that this is no, it's not character exclusive. This is on the Slum Dweller. It, I'm gonna put these both um, in B tier because they fulfill their function, right? They give you more XP, and they're kind of like an investment, but they do also take up a slot, and then they also cost money to upgrade it. And generally, I find that you get enough XP to do what you need to do in any game anyway. So like yeah, you have to spend the trait slot and spend the XP to get this, but then you'll end up getting more. So I find it generally kind of bounces out a little bit. However, it's still pretty solid. Like it's not bad. I think it's B tier though. Like it's just kind of average, kind of solid. Next is Tank Like. I'm gonna throw this in F tier. I don't really find knockback to ever be like an issue in this game. It just never really is a problem. And so sometimes even when I get this because there's nothing else to really get, like I just don't even notice this trait. It just doesn't really do anything to really like help you out. So I just think it's F tier. Trust Funder, I'm gonna throw in C tier. So it will give you money at the start of every level, but that's not super useful. Money in this game is not really gonna win you a run. It's not like super useful, but it is like a passive nice benefit, and it can help you maybe get some killing items from the shop um, and other stuff, or maybe hire people, which again is not an amazing strategy, but it'll help out a little bit. Ultimate Butterfinger, it's kind of just like the upgraded version of Butterfinger, but it will always knock an item out of an NPC's hand. I'll put that in B tier just because of the guarantee, the consistency of always hitting an item out of someone's hand versus just a chance with Butterfinger. Team Building Expert makes us you can get 3 followers instead of I think just one. That For certain, again, I'm gonna actually rank Team Building Expert and Army of Five together right now, and I think they're both gonna go. Okay, it really depends on the character you're doing. Like the Army of Five is useful for something like the zombie character, where you really need um where you really need followers, or even the mobster this is useful for. So I think Army of Five is probably gonna go. I think I think actually they're both gonna go in B tier because if you are gonna use followers, it's good to have a bunch of them and to kind of have them swarm whoever you're gonna attack. But generally, I think Army of Five is the upgraded version, so you can't really get one without the other. I'd say they're generally useful because having just one follower is not super useful, but having a bunch can really help out. So uncrits makes it so I think you just won't take damage sometimes. Yeah, this will just sometimes block damage, which I think this is going to be an A tier trait. Like obviously just not taking damage is just amazing. Wall Walloper makes it so you can hit knockdown walls. Yeah, destroy certain walls. The sledgehammer can already do this, but I think it just makes it so you can knock down more walls, which getting into walls is always really good. I think this will probably I think this will also probably be an A tier. I don't really use this often, but when I do find it to be super useful. Obviously anything that can just get you straight into a building or just knock down a wall is always going to be super helpful. Walls versus Nightmare makes it so that I think NPCs you knock back can be knocked through walls. This is useful, but also less useful because you have less control over it. Because the NPCs will kind of just fly backwards and fly into different buildings, which is not always helpful. So I think this might be a D tier because of its unpredictability, and sometimes it can actually just cause you problems and make people hostile that you didn't want to be hostile. So yeah, I think that's gonna be D tier. Teleport happy, I find to be kind of pointless. I'm gonna throw it in F tier. I don't really ever see the reason of using this. Like it just makes it so you can teleport more, but teleporting is never really an issue you have in this game. You can already teleport pretty quickly around. Big bullets, I'm gonna put in D tier. It helps you hit more players, but again, it also runs into the same problem as kind of penetrating bullets, where like you can end up hitting people you didn't want to. And also like this will make you aim easier, but that's also just kind of a skill issue. Like you just get better at aiming, and then this trait kind of just becomes pointless. Next up is Drugalug. Drugalug, I'm gonna put in S tier. This might be one of, if not my favorite trait in the entire game. The bartender starts with it, which is one of the reasons why the bartender is such a good character. Which makes it so that you know exactly what the syringes do, because by default you don't, and you're just gambling. But the syringes can be so good in this game; they can give you such good positive status effects. And the negative ones are useful too for putting them in air vents. And so yeah, this makes this turns syringes from kind of a liability and kind of something that clogs up your inventory to something that is an active like positive to you all the time, and it works on pretty much every level all the time. This is S tier, easy. Next up is wrong building, which makes it so I think you just don't get attacked if you're yeah yeah. So when you walk into a building, they'll just get annoyed at you. But this is just not really like helpful. Like usually when you need to infiltrate a building or you try to steal something or try to break something, they're just going to be hostile to you anyway. Like this can help you sneak by and it'll sometimes help, but I think it's like D tier. It's not F, it's not useless, but like just why bother? Ammo scavenger is going to be an A tier. Obviously anything that gives you more ammo. Ammo guns are amazing in this game. They just always help you out. And so it's kind of like lock and load, but just for ammo you find on the ground. It's just always going to be consistently helpful. And so that are is all the traits. I think most traits in this game I find to be like not super amazing. There's a lot of filler, a lot of bad traits in this game. Like I always find like probably B tier and up, maybe sometimes C tier traits. Like these are going to be the ones you really want to prioritize. But let me know in the comments what you think of this list. Let me know where you agree or disagree. Let me know what kind of Streets of Rogue content or tier lists you want to see in the future, any kind of gaming content you want to see in the future. And thank you for watching. Bye.